We present interactive model cards, a human-centered approach to model documentation. Model cards are an essential form of documentation for the responsible application of AI and ML technology. However, the design potential of model cards, especially as it relates to visualization and interaction, has been relatively underexplored by the research community. The design choices of existing model cards, which can include the type or the amount of text, the layout, or any visuals used, has also been rarely evaluated with people. Individuals that lack formal training in AI, ML, and data science are especially overlooked. Both these design and these evaluative limitations are going to become more important in the coming years. As one participant in our study noted, people are going to start using model cards for the first time. These are new concepts to them, and they're going to need help to try to understand what does this mean and what am I supposed to do with it. In our study, we explore alternative designs for model cards and assess their impacts. We place an emphasis on examining the role of interactivity specifically, and we also leverage the views of both experts in MLAI as well as non-experts in our assessments. We carried out a multi-phase study to develop and evaluate interactive model cards. The first was a concept study, where we leveraged the insights of experts to understand the scope of an interactive design space. We used their insights to create a functional prototype that we then evaluated with individuals who are not experts in AI, ML, data science, or NLP. Let's start by talking about the results of the concept study with experts in AI, ML, as well as ethics. In this study, we created a set of low-fidelity design probes to ideate on the capabilities of an interactive model card. We used experts in AI, ML, NLP, and ethics as a sounding board for our ideas and to help us ideate more efficiently. Our concepts used an existing model card from a sentiment analysis model that was a fine-tune of BERT. We used the text from the existing model card to create our standard model card concept. We also generated a robustness gym report as a second concept probe that allow us to dive more deeply into the quantitative analysis of the model's performance. We incorporate aspects of both the standard model card as well as the robustness gym report in our concept for an interactive model card. We use this concept probe to both demonstrate as well as elicit different types of interactions with both the model's underlying data as well as with the model itself. Our procedure for this concept study begins with an overall review of model cards. We then present the standard model card, robustness gym report, and interactive model cards to participants. We ask them both for their impressions, as well as prompting them with specific questions throughout the study. All 10 participants in our concept study had expertise in either MLAI ethics, auditability, ML development, or NLP. Not everybody was familiar with the concept of a model card, and even fewer had familiarity with robustness gym reports. A variety of themes emerged from our discussion with these experts. Not only was design an important theme, but experts contextualized the importance of model card and interaction with respect to stakeholders, sense-making and skepticism, trust and safety, as well as the importance of guidance. For stakeholders, participants felt that aspects of the concepts were great for engineers, but they were not sure how accessible it would be to many of the people that might work with them. They felt that the design could be better represented so that abstract things could be made more concrete. For guidance, they felt that people might not know what to look for and might need more cues and nudges. In trust and safety, they questioned the efficacy of ethical statements, suggesting that they're kind of vague and not entirely helpful. And finally, experts emphasized the importance of formulating rules that were semantically meaningful to the end user to actually test. We use experts' insights and reactions to our concepts to create a functional prototype of an interactive model card. Here's a quick overview of the features of our interactive model card. Text appears in an abbreviated format using simplified terminology, with details that are available upon expansion. The quantitative performance of the model is broken down not only according to the training and test set, but also US protected classes. Clicking on a bar allows us to interrogate the sentences, and we can also change how we sample the sentences that are viewed. Red outlines around the bar indicate low sample sizes, and this can also be modified by the end user. We can add new details about the model's performance, for example, by adding a new subpopulation to assess. When we click on that, we can see the sentences associated with it. And we can also add new data by adding sentences. And we can choose to either agree or disagree with the model's results and see the performance change in real time. We can also take a broader look at the data. For example, let's take a look at that funny subpopulation and see how it relates to the rest of the data in the data set. Now that was quite a whirlwind of an introduction, so let's break it down and show you more concretely how the different insights from our experts helped inform the interactive model card design. Several of our experts observed that there's a lot of jargon in the terminology of model cards, and not all of it was apparent and needed to be made much more explicit. We simplified the amount of information that was presented immediately to the user and also the way that we used language to talk about the model's information. Participants also found that while interaction was useful in the concepts, it wasn't always easy to discover. And so they thought it was important as part of the design features to make it much clearer what interactivity is doing and what you get from interaction. This was scaffolded by a number of other design features that allowed people to engage with the information on the model card. Participants also expressed that when it came to trust and safety, as well as sense-making and skepticism, they needed more information to figure out whether the model was well-rounded and ethical and transparent, which led to adding some additional features allowing people to interrogate the model on their own terms. One suggestion that repeatedly came up was to have a default set of populations that the model's performance was automatically evaluated in. We use US protected classes here at the suggestion of several experts, but these can also be modified to be more appropriate in a global context as needed. Another example of sense-making and skepticism was also allowing people to create custom subpopulations in the existing data or even add new data by adding custom sentences, and then being able to agree or disagree with the model's results. In these two examples, the sentences only changed very slightly, but the sentiment in the model's performance changes quite a bit. Important is that all of these user-driven changes and interactions are immediately reflected in the overall model's performance. Finally, experts stated the importance of having more actionable guidance, not only to understand the information on the model card, but to understand why it matters and what they could do with it. To these concerns, we introduced several guidance features throughout the model card. We now conducted an evaluative study with analysts to assess our design choices as well as to understand the role that interactive model cards could play in their workflows. We recruited 20 participants that lacked formal training in data science or machine learning. All participants learned these skills on the job. Participants were divided along two axes. First, their self-reported data science and machine learning expertise, from advanced to expert, all the way to low and limited. We also separated participants according to the frequency with which they used data science tooling, from quarterly, which is quite rarely, all the way up to daily use. Participants were split evenly between Type 1 analysts that had lower limited data scientist expertise and Type 2 analysts that had advanced expertise. The frequency of data science tooling was similar among both groups. This even split is not a coincidence but a design of our study, as we hypothesized that Type 1 and Type 2 analysts might have different needs. We used a protocol similar to the concept study. First, we introduced model cards to all participants. We then gave them a demonstration of a standard model card from Hugging Face that they could then explore. We then provided a demonstration of an interactive model card and prompted participants to explore and interrogate that as well. Without prompting, participants touched upon many of the themes that came up with our experts, including the importance of stakeholders, design, sense-making, and skepticism. They also expanded on ideas of understandability and interpretability. What was also important is that their comments added more detail and breadth to the expert observations. Many participants' comments also validated the design decisions that we made in constructing the interactive model card. Specifically, they were impressed with the language clarity, which made it easier to jump in and explore the rest of the information. One participant commented on how interactivity allowed them to do multiple things with the model card rather than rely on different tools. Another stated that The model card that was interactive would help them address communication issues across various teams. The emphasis on abbreviating information made it easier to jump in. And finally, what was important to participants is that they could explore for themselves and not just take the word of the developer. One thing that both groups of analysts emphasized, and which was different from feedback we got from our ML AI experts, was the importance of model cards as socio-technical artifacts that could slip into their workflow and help them communicate across the different roles that they regularly interact with in their work. The design decisions of the interactive model card that promoted these socio-technical aspects improved both its usability and its functionality. With usability, participants felt that they could tell a better story and get more insights into the numbers. In terms of functionality, the interactivity allowed participants to do a lightweight analysis without having to get a bunch of tools together. Interestingly, participants expressed doubt that model cards, interactive or otherwise, could help them make safety and ethical assessments of the model. While some participants felt that the interactive model cards features could serve as a basis for that conversation, overall participants felt that this was extremely nuanced and required personal judgment. Now, there was a lot more to this study than we've had time to present here. So we're going to wrap up by giving you some of the 4 top highlights and encourage you to take a look at the paper for more details and information. First, we found that interactivity was really useful to conduct a lightweight analysis, but this was often a bridge to further questions and not a substitute for it. Importantly, many of these interactive features needed to be scaffolded by non-interactive design choices to be discoverable and effective. Secondly, we found that adding interactivity and guidance to model cards helped bolsters people's productive skepticism and think more critically about both the model and the data. It would be really interesting to consider in the future how we can design more features into AI/ML tooling that promotes this kind of productive skepticism. A third observation was that model cards need to do more to support the community and not just the individual. Design actually really mattered here in helping it to achieve this goal. It was not enough to assume that something would be useful for a wide variety of stakeholders. We had to test it and evaluate it and assess whether it would be or not. Finally, unintended uses, ethics, and safety are important features of model cards, both interactive and otherwise, but these remain still too ambiguous and difficult to actually be actionable. We see many opportunities for continuing to explore the role of interaction in model cards and other type of model documentation. There are lots of opportunities to build on what we've done here to continue to expand the way that we help people think critically and productively about the use of AI/ML technology. We encourage you to get more details of our study in our paper, as well as continue the conversation by checking out our code as well as our interactive demo.